Welcome to Inside the Courtroom, the Chad-Daybell-Trial. We are happy you're here with us. It was an emotional week of testimony. Several times this week, we saw jurors wiping tears from their eyes, mostly when they were talking about the forensic pathologist was sharing information about how they found the bodies of JJ and Tylee. So we heard about JJ dying from asphyxiation. Now remember, JJ is the youngest of Lori Vallow Daybell's children, who was found dead on Chad Daybell's property near Rexburg, and also Tylee, the older of the two, the teenager, Lori's teenage daughter, who was found. They talked about Tylee being so burned that her bones were broken and charred, and so very difficult to assess that crime. As much as they were able to say about JJ, they were not able to say the same information about Tylee. Yet what jurors heard was absolutely gruesome, and we did see some of the emotion on the jurors' face listening to some of that testimony. Also on the stand this week were several members of both Chad Daybell's family and also members of Lori Vallow Daybell's family. We heard from Melanie Pulowski. You may remember in our last episode, we wondered if she would take the stand. She was subpoenaed during the Lori Vallow Daybell trial last year. She was subpoenaed but did not testify. This time she did take the stand along with her husband, her current husband. Now, if you remember, Melanie Pulowski, we've talked about this sort of convoluted, confusing family tree and all of the dynamics and all of the different places where people cross paths. You may remember that Melanie is who Lori kind of thought of as a younger sister. She's actually her niece, but she said they were very, very close. And Melanie talked a lot about how close Lori was. We've heard that, in several places, not just in court, but in previous interviews from other family members. And so she did take the stand this week and talk about what that relationship was like, and talked about being in Hawaii with Lori at the time of Tammy Daybell's death. Now, of course, Chad Daybell is accused of that killing of his wife. Supposedly, Alex Cox, Lori's brother, was supposed to be in Hawaii with them. Melanie was surprised he didn't go, but she testified that what Lori told her was that Alex had to stay behind in Idaho because there was something that he needed to help Chad take care of. We don't know what that was. Melanie did not testify to what that was, but we do know at that very same time is when Chad Daybell found his wife dead. Of course, he is now accused of killing her. Also on the stand, related to Alex Cox, was his wife, Zulema Pastinas. Now, you remember, they were only married about 2 weeks before Alex Cox passed away. Alex is Lori's brother, and we have heard about how they had a very, very close relationship. And Zulema really gave us a lot of insight into that relationship, that dynamic between them. And she talked about just how close they were and how much Alex trusted Chad. Let's listen into some of her testimony.
And who was it that could discern light and dark, if someone was light and dark?
Chad.
At some point, did you hear the term zombie?
Yes.
Do you recall who introduced that term or where you heard it?
I think the first time I ever heard it was at that lunch with Gib at Fireverse in February of 2019. But then the term kept coming up in regards to people being possessed.
Did Alex believe that there were zombies?
Oh, yeah.
Did Alex ever say anything to you about what he would want done if he became a zombie?
He told me, Sulema, if I ever turn into a zombie, just shoot me in the face.
Did you learn that Lori eventually moved to Rexburg?
Yes.
Do you know who moved with her when she went?
Tylee, JJ, and Alex.
Do you recall approximately when she moved?
It was at the end of August.
So let's explain what we're talking about here. So Zulema Pastinas, married to Alex Cox, talking about the phrase zombie. This is something that has come up now this week multiple times, talking about this idea we've heard about dark and light. Now, zombie is the term that apparently happens. They were talking about it in terms of like the worst kind of darkness, meaning that these spirits had taken over the body. So the idea was, the teaching that Zulema said that Chad was sharing with others was that once someone was a zombie, they were no longer themselves. Their body had been taken over. And you heard her say there that Alex talked about if he were to ever find himself in that situation, he said, please shoot me in the face. Obviously, a graphic explanation, but that being a way to explain just how serious they took this type of information that Zulema testified was coming straight from Chad Daybell. She says that Lori absolutely was sharing that information as well. So prosecutors wanted to know, did Zulema believe that Alex believed in what he was being told? Here's what she had to say.
They were very close to each other. They were like really good friends, and they were making plans of, going to Rexburg together. And after that, they were just very close.
Did Alex believe what Chad told him?
Oh, 100%.
Would Alex do what Chad asked?
Yeah, especially because he would tell him what to do through a blessing and tell him that it was Jesus Christ, the one that was telling him to do that, such as moving to Rexburg.
And did Chad give Alex quite a few blessings?
Yes.
At some point, did you learn Tylee and JJ had been listed as missing?
Yes.
Do you recall how you learned that?
Melanie Gibb called me to tell me that that the kids were missing.
Did you talk to Alex about that?
Yes.
What did he say?
He didn't offer any information. The last information I had from Lori was that JJ was with Kay, and then Kay was the one that was asking for a welfare check for JJ. So then I asked him, I said, well, why is Kay asking for a welfare check on JJ if she's the one that has JJ? And Alex just said, yeah, huh?
Alex just said, yeah, huh. So this is yet another story, a different story that Zulema talked about. So she was told that JJ was with his grandmother. We've heard that JJ was with a nanny. We've heard that Lori had told people and Chad had told people that he was with Melanie Gibb. And in fact, Gibb was the person that Zulema was referencing earlier in that testimony. And so lots of different stories. We now have more than a handful of different stories that either Lori or Chad themselves told people about where JJ was. We also heard several people testify that they had not heard any information about JJ or Tylee. In fact, had not even told friends. Some friends didn't even know that JJ and Tylee existed. And so that certainly is something that prosecutors are pointing to. Also, it appears that prosecutors are trying to explain that relationship between Alex and Chad, because it is clear defense attorneys have kind of laid the groundwork. Of course, we have not heard all of their witnesses yet. We haven't heard any of them yet, so we will hear a lot more of their strategy as those are called. But we do believe that they are trying to lay the foundation that Chad was not in control and that he was not the ringleader or the mastermind. And yet this week we heard from several people who said that he was the one who was acting and telling people that he was acting on behalf of Jesus Christ himself, and that he was being spoken to regularly and told to share these messages about the end of times and about the light and the dark. We also heard from Zulema about seeing Chad and Lori in the temple together, and they were according to her, very concerned about her seeing them there, and told her, please don't tell anyone. Now, this would have been a time before the death of Chad's wife. So this means that while Tammy Daybell was still alive, while Chad was married to her, he was in the temple with Lori in some sort of what Zulema believed was some sort of ceremony. We believe that that was some sort of sealing that, of course, would not be how that would traditionally work in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Also on the stand later in the week, on Friday, we heard from Tammy Daybell's sister and brother-in-law. Samantha Gwilliam was on the stand, and she talked about just the way that Chad tried to sort of control the family and tried to get them to come to Rexburg. And he said that this was the place where everyone needed to be. It was a place that people would be safe, that it was somewhat of a refuge, and that if they stayed in other areas of the country, they were at grave risk. She talked about that their life was at risk. So they also talked to Samantha about how she learned, or what she did when she learned that very, very soon after her sister's death, Chad had remarried.
At some point, did you talk to Chad or have a conversation with him about that?
Yes, I did.
And what did he tell you?
I asked him in a phone call, please tell me about this woman that you've replaced my sister with. And I asked him questions about her name because what we found out was different than what he told us. And he said, well, she had a complicated past and was trying to move on from it. And that's why they had told us the name that they had.
Judge, could we have some foundation as to when this phone call supposedly took place?
It took place December 13th.
And was that of 2019?
Correct.
Did you know where Chad was at that time?
I think he was in Hawaii.
At that same time, do you recall Chad telling you something about Tammy visiting him?
Yes,
What did he tell you?
because I was questioning him about this marriage. He asserted to me in this very, spiritual-like tone that, Samantha, I am telling you now that when I was at the cemetery, Tammy showed herself to me and said that I should move on. And I responded with, when most women say that to their husband, it's in 2 years from now, not 2 weeks after I'm dead.
Judge, argumentative.
Did you ask Chad about whether or not Lori had any minor children?
I did.
What did he end up telling you?
He told me that she had some adopted children, foster children, and older children. And I asked him, so when Mark comes home from his mission, will you be raising kids together? Because I was trying to figure out what adopted or foster children meant. And he said, no, we will be empty nesters. So I took that to mean that there were no young children.
No young children. There is an example of someone who said they didn't even know that JJ and Tylee existed until later. That is when it was later that they learned that those two were missing. And then she talked about how there was information that JJ had been possessed, that Chad had a vision that JJ would die young, and that he would come back to life as Colby's, Lori's oldest child. That JJ would come back to life as Colby's child. So lots of different information again coming in this week. So it was an interesting week of testimony, and certainly prosecutors again really, telling the story of all of the different types of information that Chad and Lori were sharing, where they were asking people not to share information, and learning more about that relationship between Alex Cox and Chad Daybell, who we now know goes back years. And so lots of speculation about the involvement of Alex. If you remember, it's Alex's DNA, fingerprints that were found on the bag and the tape that were found on the Rexburg property of Chad Daybell. And so definitely connecting Alex to these crimes. Alex is no longer alive, so not able to tell his side of the story or be brought to justice in any way. So we don't know what to expect next week in the testimony, but we do expect it is going to be another long week of lots of new information from prosecutors, and we are anxious to hear what they're able to explain and offer more of as this trial continues. We are still expecting this trial to go several more weeks, and we will be here with you to watch as it does right here on Inside the Courtroom.